Before I begin the video with my thoughts about Blizzard's first-person shooter Overwatch that we've all heard about 10 billion times, I will say that I did start a Patreon finally for the channel if you didn't watch my last video, and in the time that it's been up, the support for me has been incredible from my audience, and I am extremely thankful and very, very grateful that everybody is going to help me out in this way. Already, I am seeing myself going to the people over me and just flat out telling them, hey, put me on a shorter term schedule. I got shit to do on the internet. You wouldn't understand. It's a way of life. It's in my bones. I mean, but in all seriousness, I mean, this is fantastic for me. Like, this means a lot to me, and I am extremely grateful and thankful for you guys supporting me like this. The link is in the description if you want to add your name to the list of patrons that I've got, which I highly suggest you do. In any event, let us now talk about Blizzard's Overwatch. This is a video that might not be loved by everybody who watches it. Now, it's shocking. There may be a lot of people out there who are very serious into Overwatch, and I can absolutely see the appeal that people can take towards this game of that nature. I understand after playing Overwatch for as long as I have, which is around 70-ish hours. So, I'm more than a casual, I suppose, and I'm not serious about it. I've played it a decent amount of time. But I understand from what I've seen, and it's pretty clear that there is definitely a huge reason to stick with this game, and a huge incentive that comes with being good at this game. It is not a... I don't want to say it's a casual friendly game, but I don't want to say it's necessarily an MLG Super Pro game either. I think Overwatch fits really securely in a place not a lot of games do a good job in being. Overwatch is a game that, yeah, it is super serious if you want to take it like that. Overwatch is a game that is super in-depth. There is a meta to it. There is a skill ceiling that you will really never reach. There is always a reason to come back to this game to get better, to improve, to better yourself. The game, however, to me, and remember, this is all opinions based on somebody who does not play competitively and who only has, I say only around 70-ish hours or so of gameplay. But the game, to me, seems like it fits in this happy medium that most games don't seem to have, where it is both not necessarily focused on the super pro MLG serious gamer, and it's not exactly focused on the super casual ones either. Now, both of these kinds of people can pick up this game and enjoy it, I'm certain, to some degree. But I think that it's a game that really is best enjoyed by people who pick it up, kind of like it, and stick with it somewhat. Someone who just walks into Overwatch fresh is you're gonna get your ass kicked. Alright, this isn't like Call of Duty or something like that, where you can kind of pick up the game, and in your first playthrough, not knowing anything, going cold, all of this skill from your previous shooter experience transitions into Overwatch, and you can be pretty darn competent. Hell, the fact that there is a character in Overwatch, Soldier 76, that to me seems like it was designed as a character meant for just that purpose, goes to show that this game is not going to be easily pick-upable, I'm making that a word, by the general shooter audience. This is a hero shooter. All the characters are different. The way that they play is different. Their styles of interacting with one another are different, and this game takes a lot of learning. You can't just pick up one character and then pick up another, and all your skill transitions from one to the other, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. I'm starting off in a ramble. I do have bullet points here. And I think the best place to start would be with the cast of characters that is involved with Overwatch. It's probably the thing that comes to mind most when people talk about Overwatch. When the game was being revealed and demoed and we were getting bits of information about it, it was really obvious how all these characters were nothing alike. Everybody looked different, and everybody seemed to fill different roles. You had big tanks like Roadhog. You had little zip around characters like Tracer. You had snipers like Widowmaker. There was all sorts of roles and characters, and they were of all different ethnicities and colors and all that stuff. And while I don't credit the game being better for that, it's good to see all sorts of different everybody's, not just a bunch of gruff men running around with Kevlar and M16s. It's just refreshing. I think it does help what's already in the game as a base. It makes what's already really good in the game, I think, stand out even further. While Overwatch has had its own level of controversy surrounding the characters, and a lot of that controversy is retarded, and I think a lot of it was just drummed up for attention purposes, there is a lot to be said about how all of the people have interesting personalities, and they are different to play, and that's ultimately what is important about the cast of characters, not what their appearance is, or their diversity in terms of ethnicity and race and culture. What's really the most important thing is how they play and how they function in the game, how they are relating to the gameplay itself, how you interact with them, and how they interact with one another, especially in terms of a class-based shooter, which it kind of is. It's a hero shooter, but there are definite classes, there are definite roles. So the cast of characters and the diversity that they have in Overwatch is often lauded as a huge bonus, a great asset that keeps on giving in Overwatch. And I agree. I agree that having these kinds of characters with their diversity in terms of their gameplay, I really think that that is almost entirely positive. However, it is often, I think, neglected by people who maybe don't think into it as deeply as I do, but I do think that there is a negative aspect to this as well. It is somewhat minor. You can get around it eventually, but it's something that I've noticed as a semi-casual player. There is no way for you to really pick up this game and... God, what's a good way to phrase it here? I don't really use scripts for these, so bear with me. Overwatch's casts of characters, their roles, and the way that they play as individuals, it encourages you to not use a lot of them. And that seems weird to say, but I think it's kind of true. When I look at characters who have, when I look at players, when I look at their career profiles and I take a look at their stats, and I see they've got all these hours, and they're at all these stars, and they've got all this prestige, the more hours a player tends to have, I've noticed that the more they tend to stick to a single character. The more they tend to focus all of their time on learning one of the heroes. They will barely ever touch some heroes, if at all, and they will focus almost exclusively, as time goes on perfecting one character. And, I mean, there's positives and negatives to that. The positive is that characters aren't just things you could pick up and use well. No one is going to pick up Genji the first time and be really good at him. No one is going to be able to pick up a healer like Ana and be really good at her the first time you play. That's just not how Overwatch works. There's no simple, easy-to-use character that will allow you to just start and be extremely successful. Now, I'm sure some people are really good at this game. Some people are generally good at video games, and they can do that to a degree. But that stuff's not going to fly in competitive modes, and it's not going to fly against competent teams or against competent people. Characters, they don't control anything like one another. They are very, very unique. It keeps the game fresh. It gives you a reason to come back. It gives you a reason to learn new things and try new roles. At the same time, it does the opposite. It encourages you to stick with a single character, because the skills that you gain as Widowmaker will not translate to Ana. The skills that you gain with Zenyatta will not translate to Lucio. The skills that you gain with Reinhardt will not translate to Tracer. These characters are so different that the negative aspect of them is that you have to focus on one if you want to learn one. When you're playing this game, there are some aspects to it that are universal. The objectives, the maps, the routes on them. There are some things that will be the same across all characters, but there are many things that are simply not. I am a shitty D.Va player. She just doesn't really interest me in terms of her roles and her skills. I'm just not really that interested in playing her. I would much rather play Orisa, for instance. So if I want to pick up D.Va, I won't be good at her, regardless of how much time I spent as Orisa, or as Reinhardt, or as Zarya. The bleeding effect that occurs from one skill going into another character just isn't really in this game. I think it's a small negative aspect, and one that encourages you to play more, to learn characters, to master them, to become good at what you do. Yes, I think that overall it's a positive to have these characters like that. But when you look at a game like Dirty Bomb or Call of Duty or Battlefield, the characters are similar in a lot of the base aspects, to where you can pick up one, move to another, and you could carry over almost all of the skill. And really, it's the finer things that will be different. Not so much in Overwatch. I like to think I'm a pretty good Junkrat, or a pretty good Ana, or a pretty good Lucio. But if you ask me to be a character I just haven't really practiced yet, then, I mean, I'll stink. But people feel kind of connected to these characters. They have personalities and catchphrases, and they control so differently. It's not like it's not like they're interchangeable to a lot of people, and I can see why. Characters have character, and that's something a lot of games just don't have. That's something a lot of games cannot say about their cast. Even games that I love, like Dirty Bomb. The characters are, I mean, they're sort of unique in what they do, but as people with personalities, it's really kind of hard to interchange them. But come on, I mean, I am on fire, but an extinguisher is not required. Classic Zenyatta. Best Robot 2016. In terms of how well the characters are balanced out, I don't really have that many complaints. I still think Roadhog is a cunt, but, I mean, it's not like he's super OP or anything. Really, I don't get that vibe from any of the characters. I don't feel like I can just... I don't feel like... there are some cheap things that some of the characters do. Yeah, we mentioned Roadhog is kind of cheap, and I think that there's some characters are much easier to use than others. And I think in a sense that it is designed that way. As I mentioned earlier, Soldier 76 is a character that really is, it seems to be designed for players coming in from first-person shooters that they're more familiar with. So when you play Soldier 76, shift is sprint, and he has, a basic pulse rifle sort of gun, and little rockets, and he's a jack of all trades kind of character. He masters nothing. He's very relatable, very familiar to a lot of people, and I think that's the design of him, because they know that all of the other characters don't really play like something that's typical in other games. But he's still different enough from them to where you are telling yourself, yeah, this is Overwatch. It's not like I just point at things, pull the trigger, and they die. There is a level of intricacy that sort of goes into the actual gameplay of Overwatch. There, in the simplicity of it, there is an incredible meta. There is a lot to learn. It's kind of like Dirty Bomb or Counter-Strike Go in a way. Yes, it seems very simple on the surface, but in order to master the game, that takes a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of learning. Arguably more than any first-person shooter on the market right now, Overwatch is a prime example. It's easy to learn how to play Overwatch, but it's very difficult to master the game, let alone a single character. Let alone some of the characters that are difficult to use. So, Soldier 76, Bastion, for instance, these are easy characters to kinda learn how to play them, but they're not overpowered because of their ease. I never really got the idea about how Bastion was an OP character. He is my number one played. He's not, I wouldn't call him my main, but he is my number one played character because I like the role that he does. I like him being this defensive, set up here, be mobile here, move there, help the team by destroying this barrier. I like the role that he plays. And I like the fact that he's kind of like this blank slate sort of character who communicates with beeps and boops. But I never considered him OP, and I don't really see people playing him at all. He's definitely not for everybody. I look at a character like Genji, alright? Fuck Genji, fucking piece of shit. But there's definitely nothing newbie about Genji. Genji's one of those characters who, if you're not familiar with him, he's a cyborg ninja robot who jumps around, and it's what all the weeboos play. But he is a very difficult character to use. I suck at him. Right? I suck at Genji. And as much as he might frustrate me, because a good Genji is a legitimately frustrating kind of character to fight against, there is a huge level of skill that that player took into learning how to play him well. Like I said, I suck at Genji. I just haven't put in the time to learn him and get his roll down and what he does well. I just can't do it yet. I haven't put in the time. But man, you can tell when somebody has done that. And it is something that, yeah, it may frustrate you, but you don't go, oh, this game sucks, this game's stupid, that character's OP. But the usefulness of characters transcends just that. One thing that's really great about this game is that if you just like playing supportive roles, then Overwatch may be the perfect game for you. I don't like shooting other players, I'm not good at fighting other players, I'm not good at like capturing objectives, but what I am good at is healing teammates and giving them buffs and supporting them. Overwatch would be a fantastic game for you. The healers in this game are everything from straight up defensive characters to mobile ones with group heals to mixes of sniper and healer, and there's so many different roles that you can play as a healer in this game that it should be considered by people who think of themselves exclusively as supportive multiplayer characters. Really, what's so great about the cast of characters in this game is that there seems to be something for everybody. There really is. Even if you're not good, they have characters that are not that hard to get used to. They have characters not designed to fight the enemy, but to help the team. They have characters meant to just harass and draw characters' attentions away from the rest of the team. They've got all sorts of stuff in this game with the characters that are present. There should be something in here for everybody. And that should not be understated in today's video game market when so many games have players and characters that are identical. And that has positives and negatives associated with it, absolutely. But in this game, I think it's something that makes it shine. I can understand why somebody does nothing but play 200 hours of Mercy and not really anything else. I can understand why somebody wants to focus on one character, learn them, master them, use them to help the team to the best of their abilities. I get that. I can see that in this game. There are some games people play religiously that I just don't get. And then there are games like Overwatch, and I can see that somebody, this is their main game, that's all they do, that's all they play, this is their bread and butter. I can look at that and say, you know what, I understand why. I can look at this game, the mechanics, the intimacy that people can get with the characters in terms of learning them, and I can understand it. The skill ceiling basically doesn't exist. I never get to the point in Overwatch, I certainly haven't yet, where I feel like, I'm good enough, I don't need to practice more, or I've gotten too good at this character, it's time for me to switch to another because I've mastered him or I've learned him well enough. No, you can always do better. You can always improve. And you will constantly run into people on the other team that will remind you, yeah, you're shittier than you thought you were. There's always somebody better than you, and they will always remind you of that. But like I said before, in a sense, this game isn't exactly super casual friendly because of the skill bleed that just doesn't occur in this game compared to other games. Just jumping into this game, playing around, leaving, not really putting any serious thought into Overwatch, you're gonna lose. You're gonna get your ass kicked. People will just, it's just a meat grinder, it really is. Behind the happy, colorful, bright exterior, there is a super serious game here that should not be understated. Just because it's not grim and dark and gray and brown and misery, that does not mean that there is a very, very serious underlying competitive scene that can exist in this game. And there absolutely is. Do I recognize it? Absolutely I do. Am I part of it? Hell no. I am not. No. I do enjoy Overwatch. I legitimately do really enjoy this game, but I'm not super serial enough about it to take it as seriously as some people do. But I understand why they do. If I had to only have one shooter for the rest of my life to play, Overwatch would be in consideration for that title. And I don't say that lightly. My desire, despite the hours that I have, and it's nothing to scoff at, but despite all that, my desire to do well and better in Overwatch is great. And I can definitely see myself playing this game, and I will be playing this game far into the future. Speaking of far into the future, Blizzard, you're kind of optimistic about the state of Africa, but I mean, that's all right. It's whatever. The maps. Let's talk about the maps. Maps are one of the bigger strong points of this game, I believe. Games can be great or awful depending on just the maps. If map design is unbalanced, if it is uneven, if the choke points are in bad places, if it's too open, if there's not enough cover, if there's too many wide spaces to traverse, maps can ruin games. If I have that's one of the biggest problems I think that a game like Battlefield 1 has, for instance, how poor the maps are designed with some game modes in mind. And while playing this game comes with it a variety of different modes, like capture the objective, escort sorts of things, tug of wars, and King of the Hills, I think that the maps play a huge part in how successful these games are. And in Overwatch's case, I think they work very well. I have never entered into Overwatch, seen that we're going to play on this map or another map, and then said to myself, you know what, I'm gonna back out. I have done that with Battlefield. I have done that with other games. There are some games where I just dislike the map so much, and I think they work so poorly with the modes that I'm playing, I'm just gonna go do something else. The level of fun that I can get from this game, despite the gameplay and everything else, can be castrated because the map is so awful. But while the maps are very well designed for a variety of characters, I never felt myself saying, oh, it's this map, I can't play this person. Every character seems to have a role in every map, and a lot of characters can do well no matter what the map is. Skill dependent, of course, but it's not just the makeup of the maps in terms of how they actually play out. A lot of it has to do with how interesting they are, how colorful and bright and interesting the maps are to look at. This idealized futuristic Earth that the story of Overwatch has, that I admittedly I know basically nothing about, it's fun to be in these places. They cover a wide variety of different sorts of worlds. You have Eastern-inspired ones. This one here is Hollywood-themed. There's ones that take place in this Tibetan monastery. Map design is fantastic. It really is. And it makes you look at other games that have these very samey sorts of maps. Oh, look, more rubble. Oh, look, another upturned car. Oh, look, a street. And it makes you want to hold those games to a higher standard because of Overwatch. Overwatch is one of those games where if I was a map designer, it's like I would have fun going to work. It's like I design maps for Overwatch. That sounds like a fun job. That sounds like something that's enjoyable and interesting to do. I think map design is often an overlooked part of this game, and it's hard to really state how well it works in a video of this format, at least without going super in depth with it, which I just don't have. I'm not gonna do, for your sake and for mine, mostly for mine. But I think that if you're into first-person shooters that have objective modes, I've never found myself complaining about map design. It works well with the characters. It works well with the objectives. I think you will be A-okay. Now let's move on. This isn't so much about the game itself as it is about Blizzard. Now, we live in a world, unfortunately, in the video game markets where DLCs and season passes and microtransactions and pay to win and pay to skip, we have all these elements that are mixed in games, and they are, to different degrees, bad and acceptable. And Overwatch is a game that I have no qualms with in terms of the business practices. That sleep dart, though. So, what is the business model of Overwatch? Does it fuck you over? Does it empower you? Is it super duper fair? Well, I have no issues with it. I think it's one of the better models that there is. I've bought Overwatch a single time, and from buying Overwatch that single time, I've gotten all the new maps, and I've gotten all of the characters. I think there have been, it's weird I don't know this, I think there have been 3 new ones: Orisa, Ana, and Sombra. I hope I'm not forgetting another one. I'll make myself look like a damn fool. But all those have been free. All of the updates I've gotten for free. Everything gameplay related, I get. And that's how games should be. The only things that you can buy in this game with real money are loot boxes that are, granted, RNG, but they're all aesthetic. They're all non-gameplay changing. They just give you extra voice lines and emotes and victory poses and skins, stuff that you can look at, but not anything that actually does anything. Not only that, but everything in Overwatch can be obtained from just playing the game. So if you want a skin for a character, you can get the skin by just playing. If you want an emote, you can get it from just playing. You can get anything in this game that you can get with money that you can get from just playing the game. That's, I think, how it really should be. If you want, you can pay $1 per loot box. Unless you buy them in bulk, you can get them cheaper, which I've done a little bit. Yeah, I'm not super into it, but I've bought some here and there. But it's all aesthetic. It's all just stuff that makes you, feel like you're unlocking things as you go. But someone who just started out has just the same power potential at his fingertips that somebody with 10,000 hours does. Are some of the rewards meritorious? Yeah, some of them are. Not, I think, the really important things like skins and whatnot, but there are some. I think there could be more. A lot of it is just based on RNG. Somebody with a certain skin, it doesn't make you go, oh wow, they're super good because they unlock that skin. Really it's just luck. And it depends on what you want to see in a character. And it makes you look sort of cool, stand out a little bit. And the skins don't make it difficult for you to tell which character is which. They all are thematic. And it fits in with the lore and with the characters themselves. And they all look like they could be, believable. Nothing seems forced or strange, really. And we see a wide variety of styles associated with skins. It's good and it feels good to get a new skin or to unlock one, either through the expenditure of the in-game coins that you earn, or just from sheer dumb luck. And so many other shooters that have season passes and, pay to skip and pay to win, pay for this character, pay for that character. And again, this happens in differing levels of acceptable. Dirty Bomb does it in a very acceptable way. Other games, maybe not so much. But in Overwatch, it's all aesthetic. Don't worry about it if you're looking for a fair game for everybody, regardless of how much money you pour into it. Yeah, you could spend as much money as you want in Overwatch, but it won't make you a better player. So with that out of the way, let me see, what's next? I think, though, that, and I'll probably title this something provocative, not clickbaity, but, provocative. Instead of just my thoughts on Overwatch. But I think there are some criticisms that are legitimate to be made about Overwatch. The constant balancing, rebalancing of characters and the adjustment of the meta, that's a thing that I would probably leave to more experienced, competitive players to see how things change. I notice, for instance, just from playing casually as I go, barriers seem to be a huge deal now, especially with the advent of the newest hero, Orisa, for which the Rule 34 pornography is about what you'd expect. And that makes characters who can break barriers all the more important, and then they'll swap, and then they'll get changed, and then they'll kind of rotate around. It happens in a lot of games. Love it, hate it, it is what it is, SOCKS. I think in terms of variety, while they have nailed it in terms of characters, the game really suffers from a lack of actual number of maps. You become intimately familiar with every single map that you play fairly quickly, and the game modes are nothing groundbreaking or in and of themselves interesting. The game mode I'm playing here is a King of the Hill style capture the objective mode. One team will get on the objective, they'll capture it, and then they'll start to get a score, and when it gets up to 100%, they win. And both teams do this. They vie over the same control point. And then there's standard payload escort objectives that we see in a lot of other games. There's no deathmatch, which I'm happy, well, not happy, but is fine for me. It's objective based. That's what's most important. What else do we have here? We have, capture this point, move up, capture the next point. And some game modes have a mix of the two. So in this mode here, which is totally what Egypt's going to look like in the future, you capture the first objective, you move up to the second objective. Very simple. In other games, like in Hollywood, you'll capture the first objective, then it's an escort to the end. So it makes it a little bit different. Nothing, it keeps things a little fresh, but it's nothing insanely out of bounds here. It's strange that in a game like this, where so much interesting stuff is happening in terms of characters themselves and how they play, that the game modes would be so run-of-the-mill. And you could still have fun playing them. I just kind of wish they would come up with something a bit more unorthodox. There are arcade modes, but even then, none of them truly stand out. You have things like 3v3s, which I have enjoyed a lot, actually. There are arcade modes where everybody can play as a single character, and you could double up and have, you know, tons of fun that way. And I have had fun with a whole team. Running a whole team of the same hero, it can just be fun and amusing, and nothing to take seriously. Just something that's fun. You'll have modes that it'll randomly pick heroes for you. But really, the bread and butter of this game is the main objective type modes. I just want Blizzard to get a little more creative here in the future going forward. Also, there is no map editor and no ability to make custom games in a Halo Forge style setting. I think that's a really big missed opportunity that Overwatch could have. The PC, especially, player base is huge, and having games on the PC where you can customize maps really adds to the longevity of the game and allows for there to be a huge influx of new content as the game progresses. See things like Killing Floor 2, for instance. Community maps and modes can really make a game flourish in ways it otherwise couldn't do if it was all just developer-made content. And I think another negative aspect of this game is it's a double-edged sword with whether or not it's a positive or a negative. For me, it's a positive. For others, it might be a negative. But if you're looking for a game where you're constantly unlocking new and exciting things, Overwatch is just not the game for you. It's not about unlocking new guns and new characters and new stuff to actually do. Everything that you can do in the game is unlocked for you at the start. The longevity of this game comes from perfecting and practicing with the characters and the tools you're given and learning to communicate and focus as a team better than you did the last game. That's where the longevity and the reason to replay the game comes from, not from the next carrot on a stick that's dangled in front of you. There's nothing wrong with games that do this, but this is a game that has that old school style of play the game for the game itself. This doesn't appeal to everybody, especially nowadays. So be aware, if you're buying this game for the sake of earning new things to play around with, this is not going to satisfy you. It's a game for people who like having things and like to learn how those things can be at their full potential. It's something that still gives me a lot of satisfaction. Doing well in this game, it makes you feel great. It really is rewarding to do well in Overwatch. And in a lot of other games, it's not that rewarding to do well. This game may have extreme longevity for some players. It might have no longevity for other players. So be aware of this peril. Another negative aspect that I found about Overwatch is the community can be a little toxic. You're not exactly missing out if you mute everybody in the game and you squelch the chat. There are some people who take this game maybe a little too seriously. I understand being competitive, and I will be the first to admit there are games where I get serious and I really want to win and I castigate other players, and I try to avoid doing that as best as I can. Sometimes it's just frustrating. But in Overwatch, ooh boy, Overwatch is a lot about learning characters. It's a lot about you will suck starting out and you're going to have to practice. Like with McCree. I do good at McCree sometimes, I suck at him other times. I just got to put more hours into him. I just have to practice. And if you like being yelled at in chat or over a microphone because you're not being the best that you can be at a character, or because you didn't pop an ult at one time or another, then I mean, you're just gonna have to tell him to shut the fuck up. I'm learning, and I don't give a shit about how you fuck away. You're not my real mom. You're just gonna have to get over it, because there's a lot of really toxic, super serious players in this game who just need to let it go. It's best to be supportive of people in this game. It doesn't help anybody if you yell and scream and holler. Playing with friends is highly encouraged. Even though, as I've experienced, playing with friends and grouping up, while it does give you an actual experience bonus so you level up quicker, you have actual, real, numerical reason to play with friends, the matchmaking in this game, it does make matches. I will give it that, Pro Roadhog. But I wouldn't exactly put it up into the top tier of video game matchmaking successes. I would say that in terms of matchmaking, it is very hit and miss. There are many games where it's just a blowout. There are many games where you either stomp the other team or the other team stomps you, and there is no attempt, it seems, at balance. I have been in plenty of games where just looking at the time played and the ranks of other players, it is a joke how poorly it pairs teams together. It's just an aspect of this game. If you're going to go matchmaking, if you're going to do quick play, yes, I understand it's not a competitive mode, but that is no excuse for you having such poor matchmaking in a game like this. I want them to do better at this. There are too many blowouts. There are too many massacres, either in your favor or against you. And the game is no fun when you're just getting shat on. I don't think the matchmaking is bad enough to really dissuade you from getting the game, because I suggest you try it out, absolutely. But it is something that does come to mind, and it is in consideration for me. And I hate it when a game is an absolute massacre, and you type in the chat, well, the matchmaking is terrible, because it paired the teams up like this. And they say, oh, it's just quick play. They're like, that's no excuse. Just because you want a quick game is no excuse, especially based on how many players are playing Overwatch, that they can't pair you up well with another group of players similar to playtime with you or skill level. Just something that should be taken into consideration, something I hope they work on in the future going forward. Oh, but man, Overwatch, what it does really well, though, is when it is an even match, when it is pretty close, when it's down to the wire, when you've got overtime running, when everyone's pushing forward, you've got your ult ready, you're giving it that last go, your blood's pumping, I hope this works, I hope everyone comes together. Oh, man. Oh, man. Great game. When this game is close, it is fantastic. There's a lot of games when it comes down to the wire, you get your edge of your seat and you really, really, really get invested in the game. Those are points where Overwatch really shines. Another thing that just came to mind, I see a lot of the things I take for granted because I've been playing a lot of Overwatch recently to think about stuff to say for this here video. One of the things I really like in this game is how it kind of divvies up rewards and experience. What's really cool is that you're not really competing against the other teams in terms of the experience you gain, but you get medals based on how good you're doing within your own team. So you get gold if you're the most of something, objective time, damage dealt, health given, enemy eliminations, which are counted as team efforts instead of just whoever lands the final blow, which is another thing I really like about a game like this, especially with how team-oriented it is. And it does show you stats in the game. Like for Anna here, it says, you have this many turbo boost assists, this many enemies put to sleep, scoped accuracy, unscoped accuracy, little things like that. But it's really good that you're competing with your own team in terms of getting these medals that will get you more experience. So it pushes you to do better with your own team, not necessarily against the other team. You compete with your own team for experience, but you compete against the enemy team for the victory. What this means is that even if you lose the game, even if you lose horribly, you can still get a good amount of experience if you're the best in your team at a certain thing. So if you're the best healer, well, you get the same amount of XP for being the best healer on your team from that medal as if you were on the losing or winning side. So that's really interesting. I like that about it. It keeps progression kind of rolling on its own way. There's another aspect of Overwatch that I think is both a positive and a negative, and that's the ultimate abilities. Ultimate abilities are the bar that you see at the middle bottom of the screen. It's not a bar. It's like, it's a bar that curls around a circle, and it's like a radial sort of, I don't know. It's a thing with numbers. When that number gets to 100, you can press Q and you can win, or you can activate an ultimate ability, and they vary based on characters. Anna here supercharges a friendly character. Sombra uses an EMP that means no enemy around her can use abilities for a while. Pharah, flying in the sky there, she lets loose a barrage of rockets. Bastion turns into a tank. Everyone has a unique and interesting ability, some more interesting than others. Now, Soldier 76 literally gets auto-aim. These definitely add variety to gameplay, and they encourage you to use these in tandem with other people's ults and abilities to turn the tide of battle. Now, the positive aspects are just that. They're interesting. They can promote teamwork. They give you an extra ability to use. They give you variety in what you can actually accomplish. But a negative aspect to it that I've seen is that they can turn the tides of battle really quickly. And I mean, real bam, just like that, you go from winning and doing really well to the other team using a proper ultimate, and all of a sudden, the balance of power, it has been shifted. Some of these ults are so powerful and quick to use that they are really, really difficult, if not impossible, to counter. Widowmaker's ultimate ability is an infrared vision that allows all team members to see the locations of enemy team members. You can't counter this in any way. There's nothing you can do to counter it. You just have to live with that aspect of your life for a while, because the enemy Widowmaker, her bar filled up and she pressed Q. Now they can all see where you are. That's a very, very, very beneficial ability to have. Luckily, respawns are often. You will constantly be respawning and taking the other team out and getting to the objective and walking back and forth. So it's not a huge deal. It's not like a game changer necessarily, where a team will win just because the other team popped all their ults, but it does happen. Reaper, for instance, does heavy damage to enemies that are around him very quickly. Friends of mine had said, with Reaper, it's press Q to win. And in a sense, that's true. But I also would definitely, please do not say I don't understand. I definitely understand that there is a skill that comes with using ults at the right time, in the right place, and in the correct tandem with your other team members. I understand this, right? And I know a criticism of some of my criticisms will be, oh, you just don't get the game. I do. I understand it enough to see what's going on, but that doesn't negate some of the personal opinions that I have and the criticisms that I have of Overwatch. I know it's a lot of people's baby. I get it. But not all babies are, a lot of babies are ugly. And not all babies are perfect. Anyway, I've been talking for about 42, 43 minutes or so. So I want to wrap it up. There are probably some things more that I could say, but I think I've been fairly in-depth with the way that I've talked about Overwatch as I've rambled on here. I didn't script this. I just had a couple little bullet points, characters, teamworks, maps, building model. But overall, I will say that I really enjoy Overwatch. I think it's a fantastic game. It's one of the best shooters I've ever played. It is interesting, it is unique, it is bright and colorful. It breaks the mold of the standard fare first-person shooter we see on the market so much these days. It's very refreshing to play, and there's so much enjoyment to be had here if you think that the best thing in a game is learning to be better on a personal level, learning to get better as a player. If you like that sort of thing, you'll love Overwatch. If you haven't, I know you've heard of it, but if you haven't tried it, it does get my recommendation. Keep that in mind, based on how much stock you want to put into my opinions. God, man, I'm going to call it there in terms of talking about Overwatch. I got to call it somewhere. Maybe there's more that needs to be said, but those are the things that come to my mind. And I do, like I said before, I've got a Patreon up now. If you want to support me, the best way to do it is to send me a little bit of change at the end of every month. It helps me out a lot, and it will help me go part-time at my full-time job to spend more time sitting on my asshole making videos for you guys. I have a Twitter. I'll link that below as well if you want to keep up with my shit posting in between videos. It's there for you if you like it. If not, you may ignore it at your leisure. What do you think of this video? Let me know in the comments. What do you think about Overwatch? What do you think other games do you think I should try out in tandem? No, I'm not going to take any more requests. I got enough on my plate already. Gotta call it somewhere. You guys have fun.